So maybe there's like a grand unification theory on trauma. Like the last 2 years of my research has been about multiples, DID, dissociative identity disorder. This idea that you could splinter a personality into parts, like Gloria Vanderbilt, for example, like any psychopath. Um, the idea that the elite are sort of like thoroughbreds. I'm talking about certain parts of the elite. Epstein is like a thoroughbred. The dude has to masturbate 3 times a day to feel normal. So he's more of a meat puppet than he is like someone who's dangling the strings. So I'm working on my new book right now. It doesn't look like it, but I am. I'm finishing Carl Wickman's book, 30 Years Among the Dead. I was clued into that by Jerry Marzinski. Interview is coming still. And man, I'm pouring through all his cases. These are like really, really good stuff. I see why Jerry liked this book so much. Basically, Wickman was alive early turn of the century, 1900s, lived in Los Angeles, ran a practice with his wife. His wife was a spiritual medium, which I know it sounds, well, it used to sound a lot weirder when I first started this. I had always sort of shut this door to the whole, didn't really shut it. I just, when you hear about ghosts and stuff, what else do you do? I mean, seriously, what do you do? But anyway, I'm researching this for, I won't tell you why, but it really fascinating cases here. Pete Niedermeyer died August 30th, 1922. He joined a gang in Chicago, and the gang initiation was to watch someone die. And they killed a guy. Him and 4 other guys watched someone else kill a guy. Everyone was put to death. This guy Pete was hung for what he did. And when he comes through, so the spirit world comes through Wickman's wife, and he explains how messed up capital punishment is. Obviously, he didn't want to be hung for what he did. And it's hard to even have sympathy for that because you watch someone watch a murder. But I just wrote an article about why sovereignty can't work if we're allowing the state to kill each other. It's weird. Well, half the side says you can't kill a fetus, what they call a fetus, a baby, and the other half says you can't kill a criminal. But both those end up being like a majority rule decision based on an arbitrary set of rules that we make. You're still taking a life, basically. It's the gist of that. But looking at Pete's case, he's explaining that suicides are, a lot of times they're possessions. People get taken over, and then they're taunted into killing themselves. And by us capital punishing them, you're actually creating more of these earthbound spirits that are basically were being possessed when they committed a murder, and now their spirit is in this same kind of earthbound state. I know it sounds crazy, but these are like really good case studies. They're really convincing, I should say, reading them. And I have not been into this realm at all, but all of this makes sense when you think about multiple personalities, about alters, about this idea of splitting personalities. If you could drive a wedge into someone with trauma, pry it open, that trauma is like your egoic break into your shields, and a possession can go in, what we call a demon, can enter the body. And all these case studies are of all these spirits that have been encapsulated in someone's auric field. And they're able to cleanse them out. This is what Sherry Sweeney does. You can check her out on YouTube. Freeman TV does an episode of that. Interesting stuff. Pete describes what this spirit world is. He's like, imagine all these beautiful flowers. Each of them smell different. Each of them have their own beautiful fragrance. The spirit world is like a flower bed. All is beauty and harmony. I mean, there is no selfishness. One shines more than another because he has more understanding. One shines more than another because he has more understanding. Like he's more in harmony with logos or whatever you want to call it. Pete, like a couple other cases, is asking for thoughts for his mother. He views human brain-powered thoughts as a commodity. It's important to him. Being that he's stuck in the spirit world, he has no body to move around. He has no conduit to help his family tree. And so he's asking others to put their thoughts towards his mother because his mother was actually stuck in the spirit world too, somewhere else, is what he's saying. But it's an interesting clue. It's an interesting clue about our intentions, our belief center, and how that affects the environment. Add to that another case, 1900s, a woman hangs herself. She has no signs of depression. Boom, she goes out to the barn and hangs herself. When she comes through this body, she's explaining, evil spirits were attracted to me by jealous thoughts. She says, as soon as I found myself out of my body, I saw at once the cause for my rash act. Evil spirits who had been attracted to me by the jealous thoughts of other persons were standing near, grinning with devilish satisfaction at their work. They had influenced me to end my life. I had no occasion to even think of such a folly. An irresistible impulse had come over me. I fastened the rope around my neck and only realized what I'd done when it was too late. I would have given the world to have been able to regain possession of my body. Oh, what horrors of despair and remorse I've gone through. My home shattered, my husband devastated, etc., etc. Every earthbound spirit in Wickman's book that talks about suicide has one thing in common. They miss their body. The book reports they're sort of bound here until their natural death, which doesn't make sense to me because your natural death would be suicide. You know, again, I'm just trying to look at all this. But it's interesting that culture pushes, we celebrate how great it is to not know your gender, we have all this age dysphoria. We have all these programs that are encouraging you to escape your body. In fact, we're calling our bodies prisons. But here are all these spirits saying it's the exact opposite. It's going to get touchy here, but as I'm reading through this, it just hits me so hard about Tracy Twyman and Isaac Cappy. Both of those were suicide. Both of them were related to this campground and this idea that jealous thoughts could be directed at somebody. If you think about abortion, if you think about capital punishment, if you think about war, all of those are deaths that are going to result in basically this confusion. All these spirits don't know that they're dead. In fact, if you trace back old Indian mounds, I think you're looking at the same thing. Paris, the whole city's above catacombs. Same with Rome. Displaced bones. Spirits that don't know they're dead. All these spirits seem to have some kind of supervisor. They've been sent on some kind of task. I can't say this is all crazy because it kind of snaps everything together. That's what I meant by grand unification theory for trauma program, because it all this snaps, all these pieces kind of fit together. If you start to look at it this way, could you harness a forgotten soul? Could you harness a tormented soul? Being tormented means they're still bound to earth. They're still in this realm. So could you harness them? Jerry Marzinski says over and over that these demons have been convinced that they have no light, and that the way to quench them, to finish them, is to prove to them that that was a lie. And they always say they were lied to. They were lied to and said, you don't have any light, and if you do not do my bidding, I will send you back into the pit. Which is, it never says pit so far in Wickman's book, but they talk about being in a cage or a box, this dark box where all they can see is their own actions. This goes for everybody, not just the suicide cases. Any earthbound spirit is basically trapped in this box. I'm trying to picture the landscape because you get clues from that, and there's no space involved. I say that because one spirit could be released through a realization that they're dead, basically, and other spirits are waiting around for them. They're calling to them. But those other spirits, some of them are like from broken families where there's like two husbands or whatever. And it gives you a clue that this has to be an omnipresent kind of world, at least in time. You couldn't be there waiting, trying to get your son that was a criminal to join you, but then also be like over here with your husband or with your father, or all their other stuff, all these intertwined dendrites, like ridges. There's not really a map in here. It's more it's tangible by thought. All these spirits move by thought, but they're stuck in bodies because they don't know that they just think them way out. In fact, they think that they own the body that they're in, according to all these reports. That they have to be shown that that's not your body. And once they don't recognize their body, that's when they get freaked out enough where they go. Meanwhile, there's this electrical treatment that Marzinski and I talked about, this violet ray invented by Tesla, which causes that jolt. But so does trauma. So does being sick. So does dementia. So does crystal meth. So does paranoid schizophrenia. These could be massive possessions. All of it could be possessions because we're living in a world that's surrounded by earthbound spirits that have been put here by 2 world wars, a lot of false flags, a lot of drug abuse, pedophilia. You get the picture, right? There's a concerted effort to up the population of earthbound spirits here. That concerted effort could possibly be harnessed by someone who knows how to manipulate these dark spirits. This would explain why this New World Order is so freaking talented at this, why they're so advanced ahead of us. God, this sounds crazy. Everything I'm saying sounds crazy. But it doesn't sound any crazier than pretending everything's just atheism and that somehow a motor protein just evolved out of nothing. Or that a fucking chicken decided to get that complex by its own. I just want to figure out what's going on. And if it looks like a fool because it turns out I'm wrong, I'm going to figure this out later. That's cool. I don't mind being a fool as long as I'm looking. 2 years ago, I really thought this is multiple personalities, but man, what if it's always these demons or spirit possessions? What if it's always our thoughts? Like you said, that just fascinating clue. Evil spirits are attracted to me by jealous thoughts. Wouldn't that explain why pop stars are so freaking nuts? Wouldn't that explain why, okay, maybe only guys have heard this, but like there's like a joke about there's a vector of like how pretty you are as a woman versus how crazy you are. Like, which I want to say that I've met all kinds of crazy women, that they come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. But my point is that there's that vector could be related. Like it really makes sense. And this would explain why you would need a media that's full tilt on all the time. This is why you have to invest so much time into bullshit narratives to get your beliefs in line, to get you thinking about things like NASA or nuclear weapons or racism or sexism. It would explain why they're spending that much effort. So you think about it. I don't know.